The German answer to the T-34, the untold story of the VK30.01D. Picture this, it's 1941, and Nazi Germany's Blitzkrieg is tearing through Europe. Their tanks, the Panzer III and IV, have crushed Poland, France, and beyond. The German war machine seems unstoppable. But then, on the vast plains of the Soviet Union during Operation Barbarossa, they run into something totally unexpected: the Soviet T-34 tank. This beast, with its sloped armor, powerful gun, and surprising speed, sends shockwaves through the German ranks. Out of this chaos, the idea for the VK30.01D is born, a German tank designed to go toe-to-toe with the T-34. Spoiler alert, it never made it to mass production, but its story is a wild ride of ambition, innovation, and missed opportunities. Why should you care about a tank that never saw the battlefield? Because this isn't just about steel and firepower, it's about human ingenuity, wartime politics, and the what-ifs that could have reshaped World War II. So, grab a snack, settle in, and let's explore the rise and fall of the VK30.01D in a way that'll keep you glued to the story. Chapter 1. The T-34 Shockwave, the game changer from the East. Imagine you're a German tank commander in 1941. You're rolling across the Soviet steppe, confident in your Panzer III with its 37mm gun, or your Panzer IV with a short-barreled 75mm cannon. These tanks have dominated every battlefield so far. But then, out of nowhere, you face the T-34, a Soviet tank that looks like it's from the future. Its sloped armor shrugs off your shells like they're nothing. Its 76mm gun punches through your tanks from a mile away, and it moves like a sports car despite weighing 26 tons. This is no ordinary tank, it's a game changer. In October 1941, near the town of Mtsensk, the German 4th Panzer Division gets hammered by T-34s and the heavy KV-1 tanks. The Germans lose dozens of tanks in a single battle, and their trusty 37mm anti-tank guns, nicknamed door knockers by soldiers, are useless against the T-34's armor. Even the newer 50mm guns on the Panzer III struggle to make a dent. For the first time, the German army realizes its tanks are outdated, and the panic sets in. Why was the T-34 such a big deal? Let's break down what made the T-34 so special, especially for an American audience that might know more about Shermans than Soviet tanks. Sloped armor. The T-34's front armor was angled at about 60 degrees, making it way tougher than its actual thickness suggested. Shells would bounce off instead of penetrating, a design trick that was revolutionary at the time. 76mm gun. This cannon could knock out German tanks from long range, while most German guns struggled to return the favor. Speed and range. Powered by a diesel engine, the T-34 could hit 34 miles per hour and travel up to 250 miles on a single tank of fuel. Insane for a tank in 1941. Mass production. The Soviets designed the T-34 to be built fast and cheap, even in factories under siege. By 1941, they were churning out thousands. German engineers got their hands on captured T-34s and were blown away. They even thought about copying it outright, but that plan hit a wall. Why? Germany didn't have the know-how to mass-produce diesel engines like the Soviets, and their steel quality couldn't match the T-34's. Plus, the Germans had their own engineering pride. They didn't want to just copy a Soviet design. So, they set out to build something better, the VK30.01D. Chapter 2. The birth of a challenger, the Great Tank Contest. By late 1941, Germany's Ministry of Armaments knew they needed a new tank to counter the T-34. They launched a competition for a new medium tank, codenamed VK30, meaning roughly 30 tons. Four big-name German companies stepped up: Henschel, Porsche, MAN, and Daimler-Benz. Each was tasked with designing a prototype that could take on the Soviet juggernaut. Here's the lineup. Henschel came up with the VK30.01H, a beefed-up version of the Panzer IV with overlapping road wheels and better armor. Porsche worked on the VK30.01P, but they dropped the ball to focus on the heavy Tiger tank. MAN proposed the VK30.02M, which later evolved into the famous Panther tank. Daimler-Benz rolled out the VK30.01D, a tank that borrowed heavily from the T-34, but with a German twist. The Daimler-Benz design, the VK30.01D stole the spotlight. Why? Because it wasn't just another tank, it was a bold attempt to blend Soviet innovation with German precision. What made the VK30.01D special? The VK30.01D was a cutting-edge machine for its time. Here's what set it apart: sloped armor. For the first time in German tank design, the VK30.01D used sloped armor, inspired by the T-34. The front plate was 80 mm thick and angled to deflect shells, giving it protection rivaling much heavier tanks. 75 mm KWK-42L-70 gun. This long-barreled cannon was a beast, capable of punching through Soviet armor at long range. Compare that to the Panzer IV short-barreled gun, which was better for lobbing shells at bunkers than fighting tanks. Diesel engine. Unlike most German tanks, which ran on gasoline, the VK30.01D used a diesel engine. This made it more fuel-efficient and less likely to catch fire when hit, a big deal on the battlefield. Leaf spring suspension. Instead of the complex torsion bar systems used in later tanks like the Panther, the VK30.01D had a simpler leaf spring suspension. This was cheaper to build and easier to fix in the field. Extra fuel tanks. The tank could carry detachable external fuel tanks, boosting its range to about 120 miles, perfect for the vast Eastern Front. Crew comfort. Designed for a 5-man crew, it had two MG-34 machine guns, one in the hull, one in the turret for close-range defense. Here's the VK30.01D by the numbers. Weight, 35 tons. Length, about 30 feet. Top speed, 35 miles per hour. Range, 120 miles. Crew, 5. Armament, 75 mm KWK-42L-70 gun, 2 MG-34 machine guns. Armor, 16 mm to 80 mm, depending on the section on paper. This tank was a winner. It was faster, better armed, and better armored than the Panzer IV, and it could hold its own against the T-34. So, what went wrong? Chapter 3. Why the VK30.01D never made it. The roadblocks despite its promise. The VK30.01D never got past the prototype stage. Here's why. The Panther rivaled man design, which became the Panther, won the competition. The Panther had a bigger turret, which gave the crew more space and better visibility, a big plus for tank commanders. It also used the same Maybach engine as the Tiger, making repairs and logistics easier. The VK30.01D's diesel engine, while innovative, required new production lines, which Germany couldn't afford mid-war. Ground pressure issues. VK30.01D's tracks weren't wide enough, which meant higher ground pressure. On the muddy, boggy terrain of the Eastern Front, this could bog the tank down. The Panther, with wider tracks, was better suited for those conditions. Military politics. German weapons office, Waffenamt, leaned toward man's design because it fit their traditional engineering approach. The VK30.01D, with its T-34-inspired features, felt too foreign to some decision-makers, despite being cheaper and easier to produce. Hitler's obsession with big tanks. By 1942, Adolf Hitler was increasingly fixated on massive tanks like the Tiger and, later, the Maus. This bigger is better mentality diverted resources from practical projects like the VK30.01D. His decisions were often more about ego than strategy, and that hurt Germany's war effort. Only one VK30.01D prototype was built. It went through testing, showed promise, but was shelved in favor of the Panther. After the war, the prototype disappeared, leaving behind just a footnote in history. Chapter 4. The bigger picture. Economics and industry. Germany's war economy in 1941-1942. To understand why the VK30.01D didn't make it, let's zoom out to the state of Germany's economy during the war. By 1941, Germany was stretched thin, fighting on multiple fronts: Western Europe, North Africa, and now the Soviet Union. Resources like steel, aluminum, and rubber were scarce, and factories were running at full tilt. Historical data shows Germany produced about 3,800 tanks in 1941, mostly Panzer Es and IVS. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, despite evacuating factories to the Ural Mountains, pumped out around 6,500 tanks, with T-34s making up a big chunk. Germany simply couldn't keep up with that pace. Switching to a new tank like the VK30.01D would have meant retooling factories and retraining workers, which was a tall order under wartime pressure. Daimler-Benz, despite being a powerhouse think Mercedes-Benz today, faced stiff competition from MAN and Henschel, who had better connections with military brass. Plus, the diesel engine for the VK30.01D required new supply chains, which was a logistical nightmare when fuel and parts were already in short supply. Impact on tank design. Even though the VK30.01D never hit the assembly line, its ideas lived on. The sloped armor concept became a cornerstone of the Panther, and later tanks like the Soviet T-34 and the American M48 Patton adopted similar designs. The diesel engine idea also caught on post-war, with the US and other nations moving away from gas-powered tanks for better efficiency and safety. For an American audience, think of it like this: the VK30.01D was the concept car that never made it to dealerships, but its sleek design and tech inspired the next generation of Mustangs or Corvettes. It was a stepping stone to bigger things. Chapter 5. What if the VK30.01D had been built? Let's play a little what-if game. Imagine Germany had chosen the VK30.01D over the Panther. How might things have turned out? More tanks, faster. The VK30.01D was simpler and cheaper to build than the Panther. Germany could have cranked out more of them, potentially closing the gap with the Soviet Union's massive tank production. Better fuel efficiency. Diesel engines burn less fuel and are harder to ignite, which could have saved lives and stretched Germany's dwindling fuel supplies. T-34 rival. With its speed, firepower, and armor, the VK30.01D could have been a real headache for T-34 crews, especially early in the war. But there's a flip side. Germany's fuel shortages were brutal by 1943, and diesel was even harder to come by than gasoline. Plus, the simpler suspension might have struggled in the muddy, snowy conditions of Russia. And let's be real, even a great tank wouldn't have stopped the Allied juggernaut, with the US churning out thousands of M for Shermans and the Soviets flooding the battlefield with T-34s. Chapter 6. Lessons from a Lost Tank. The story of the VK30.01D isn't just about a tank that never was. It's a lesson in how politics, ego, and resource constraints can kill a great idea. German engineers had a shot at building a T-34 killer, but bureaucracy, competing designs, and Hitler's obsession with oversized tanks got in the way. It's a reminder that even the best tech can't win if the system behind it is flawed. For Americans, this might resonate with stories of canceled military projects. Think of the Comanche helicopter or the Crusader artillery system, scrapped despite their potential. Innovation is only half the battle, execution is everything. And that's the tale of the VK30.01D, a tank that could have been a legend, but ended up a footnote. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into a forgotten piece of World War II history. If you're as fascinated by tanks, tech, and history as I am, hit that subscribe button and let me know what you think in the comments. Would the VK30.01D have outshined the T-34? What other World War II stories do you want to hear? Your feedback keeps the channel going, so don't hold back.